Chanel didn't just close a door, they locked it, bolted it, and quietly told the entire world that Meghan Markle was no longer welcome anywhere near their velvet ropes. Not in Paris, not in Beverly Hills, not in London, not anywhere. And when a house like Chanel makes a decision like that, it's not a misunderstanding. It's a verdict. According to insiders, the blacklist isn't limited to one awkward boutique moment. It's global. Meghan is reportedly barred from entering Chanel stores, denied private appointments, cut off from the polished inner sanctum where celebrities sip espresso and whisper over tweed samples. Let that sink in. For a brand as rigid, disciplined, and image-obsessed as Chanel, this is nuclear. They don't do messy public feuds. They don't do emotional back and forth. They do silence. They do removal. They do erasure. And in Meghan's world, erasure is the ultimate humiliation. Behind the scenes, she's telling a completely different story. She insists this didn't start with a blacklist. She claims it began with bullying, with dismissal, with subtle disrespect disguised as creative differences. In her version, she wasn't treated like a collaborator. She was treated like a prop. Meetings, she says, were cold. Ideas she presented were nodded at, then quietly shelved. She believed she was stepping into a partnership. Instead, she now frames it as being used as a decorative accessory. And when she began pushing for more control, that's when the temperature changed. Access shrank. Invitations thinned. Conversations became transactional. Decisions were made without her. To Meghan, this wasn't fashion politics. It was hierarchy reminding her of her place. She reportedly sees Chanel's legal maneuvering not as brand protection, but as a warning shot. A message. You don't dictate terms to a century-old empire. There were whispers she considered countersuing, professional harm, reputational sabotage. But according to those familiar with the legal reality, that plan never truly took off because Chanel didn't argue. They didn't defend themselves. They didn't clap back. They went silent. And in luxury fashion, silence isn't weakness. It's dominance. That silence exploded into public view in Beverly Hills, the moment that's now circulating in hushed retail circles like forbidden gossip. She walked in expecting velvet rope treatment, private escort, champagne energy. Instead, security stepped forward. No raised voices at first, no spectacle, just a firm, immovable refusal. The brand would not be engaging with her. Witnesses say she froze, then unraveled. Phones came out. Prince Harry was called. She paced outside the boutique, visibly shaken, furious, insisting that staff would be fired by the end of the day. There were reportedly threats, declarations that she would ruin those responsible. The irony? Publicly, Meghan champions kindness, compassion, emotional wellness. But those present describe something entirely different. And Harry? Sources say he tried to de-escalate, urging her to leave, to stop drawing attention, to calm down. But this wasn't about a handbag. This was about power slipping. Because when brands stop accommodating you, the illusion of influence evaporates instantly. And insiders say that's what's truly rattling her. The timing couldn't be worse. Financial pressure is reportedly mounting. Projects once expected to generate steady income have stalled or dissolved. Revenue streams are narrowing. And with each closed door, the urgency to control the narrative becomes more frantic. She allegedly wants Netflix to reconsider, Spotify to reopen doors, validation that she still matters. But industry executives aren't seeing momentum anymore. They're seeing exhaustion. Repeated public grievances, legal disputes, controversy without measurable return. The word being whispered isn't disruptive, it's radioactive. And that word travels fast in Hollywood. There's even talk of relocation. Canada, Australia, places she believes might offer a softer landing. But private polling reportedly paints a brutal picture. Goodwill evaporated, public sentiment deeply negative. Meanwhile, Paris fashion circles, already irritated by what some describe as gatecrashing and self-invited appearances, have allegedly drawn hard boundaries. Major houses are said to have quietly blacklisted her. Not debated, not negotiated, simply agreed upon. The shared assessment? Too disruptive, too controlling, too self-focused. And the stories swirling inside the industry don't help. One particularly damaging account describes her screaming at staff over coffee instead of green tea, not a polite correction, but a public dressing down so intense the employee reportedly quit the next day. Exaggerated? Maybe. But insiders say it fits a pattern they've heard repeatedly. Assistants in tears, service workers humiliated, staff afraid to speak up. One story can be dismissed. A dozen? That becomes reputation, and reputation is everything in fashion. While she speaks publicly about mental health and compassion, private narratives are painting a harsher image. Luxury brands don't just assess popularity, they assess risk. And right now, risk is outweighing glamour. But the most devastating whispers don't involve Chanel. They involve Harry. Harry. Sources close to him say something has shifted, that nostalgia for the United Kingdom has crept back in, that he speaks of simplicity, routine, stability, things he once had. There are murmurs he's quietly considering reaching out to the palace, not publicly, not defiantly, just asking if there's any path back, any mercy, any reset. But insiders insist the biggest obstacle isn't the palace, it's Meghan. They describe a dynamic where he defers constantly, where confrontation is avoided, where he lowers his head when she lashes out publicly. One source allegedly described watching him disappear in real time. As Chanel's blacklist holds firm, as Paris remains closed, as Hollywood recalculates, as financial pressure tightens, Meghan is facing something she's rarely encountered, a wall that won't move. No public statement from Chanel, no dramatic takedown, just a decision already made. And in the world she once relied on, fashion, entertainment, royalty, silence doesn't mean confusion. It means finality. And here's the part no one wants to say out loud. This isn't just about Chanel. It's about what happens when every powerful room you once walked into with cameras flashing suddenly decides you are no longer essential. Because once one legacy house draws a line, others watch carefully. And they copy. Inside European fashion circles, the mood is reportedly icy. Doors that once opened out of curiosity are now closing out of calculation. Invitations that used to arrive quietly are no longer sent at all. Not debated, not dramatized, just removed. That's the detail that stings the most. There's no grand public humiliation campaign, no coordinated attack, just absence. And absence in elite industries is lethal. According to insiders, multiple Paris houses have allegedly agreed on one thing: unpredictability is bad for business. Luxury brands don't survive on chaos. They survive on control, on precision, on centuries of image protection. When someone is described internally as disruptive, too controlling, too self-focused, the solution is rarely confrontation. It's removal. And that's what appears to be happening. The Beverly Hills boutique incident wasn't just a viral whisper, it became a symbol. A moment retail insiders now reference as the tipping point. Because when security steps in, it signals something deeper than a scheduling issue. It signals finality. Witnesses described her pacing outside, calling Harry, visibly furious, insisting consequences would follow. But no consequences came. No staff were fired. No apologies were issued. Chanel didn't blink. That unflinching silence is what reportedly unsettled her most, because outrage has always been a tool, a lever, a way to regain narrative control. But when the other side refuses to engage, the strategy collapses. Meanwhile, industry executives in Hollywood are watching this unfold with cautious distance. There was a time when controversy equaled relevance, when disruption was rebranded as boldness. But insiders say the appetite has shifted. Executives are tired. They don't want explosive headlines attached to production budgets. They don't want unpredictable public grievances overshadowing streaming deals. They want stability. And according to sources, that's not what they associate with Meghan anymore. There's talk she desperately wants Netflix or Spotify to reopen doors, to revalidate her influence. But in private rooms, the word floating around isn't comeback, it's liability. Financial pressure reportedly compounds the tension. Projects have stalled. Expected income streams have narrowed. When luxury brands step away and entertainment giants grow cautious, the math becomes uncomfortable. And that's when relocation rumors surface. Canada, Australia, fresh start narratives. But private polling allegedly paints a grim image. Public sentiment described as deeply negative in both regions. The goodwill she once leveraged is no longer guaranteed. Inside fashion circles, stories, whether exaggerated or not, are doing damage. The green tea incident, the coffee mistake, the public reprimand so intense that a staff member reportedly quit the next day. One story can be gossip. Repeated stories become pattern, and patterns make brands nervous. Luxury houses aren't just selling clothing, they're selling fantasy. And fantasy doesn't tolerate backstage chaos. What makes the narrative sharper is the contrast. Public messaging centered on compassion, kindness, mental wellness. Private whispers describing explosive moments. Assistants reduced to tears. Service workers humiliated. Staff afraid to speak up. Whether every detail is accurate almost becomes irrelevant once the perception hardens. Reputation in elite industries moves faster than facts. And then there's Harry. The most haunting element of this entire unraveling isn't Chanel's silence. It's his. Sources close to him say he's been speaking nostalgically about the United Kingdom, about routine, about familiarity, about the life he left behind. Some even whisper he's quietly considering reaching out to the palace, not with defiance, not with press releases, but privately, asking if there's any path back, any reset button. But insiders claim the obstacle isn't necessarily royal protocol. It's the dynamic at home. Repeated accounts describe him deferring, avoiding confrontation, standing beside her during public lash-outs looking visibly uncomfortable. One source described watching him disappear in real time, and that description lingers. Because if even the one person who once symbolized protection and access is now rumored to be questioning everything, the isolation deepens. Chanel's blacklist becomes symbolic. Paris closing its doors becomes symbolic. Hollywood recalculating becomes symbolic. It all points to the same quiet conclusion. Influence is only powerful when institutions cooperate. And right now, institutions are stepping back. What makes this saga brutal is that there's no dramatic showdown, no televised confrontation, no explosive press conference, just a string of silences. Silence from Chanel, silence from Paris houses, silence from major streaming executives, and silence in elite ecosystems is not confusion. It's consensus. It means the decision has already been made behind closed doors. And when consensus forms in fashion, in entertainment, in royalty, it is nearly impossible to reverse. The most devastating part? Outrage no longer opens doors. Accusations no longer shift power. Legal threats no longer intimidate century-old empires. Because those empires understand something simple, time outlasts noise. If Chanel never says another word, the blacklist still stands. If Hollywood never publicly criticizes her, contracts can still quietly expire. If the palace never responds, distance can still solidify. And for someone accustomed to shaping narrative through confrontation, that kind of stillness feels suffocating. This isn't a dramatic explosion. It's a slow freeze. One boutique at a time. One invitation at a time. One unanswered call at a time. Chanel drew a line, and instead of erasing it later, as some hoped, they let it sit there, unchallenged, immovable. Because in luxury fashion, you don't fight in public. You decide, and then you proceed as if the person no longer exists. And that might be the most brutal blacklist of all. Brutal blacklist of all. Brutal blacklist of all. Brutal black...